Ever wonder why we call underwater creatures sea monsters, but no one talks about land monsters? Sounds kind of weird, right? Well, there's actually a pretty solid reason for that. Earth's oceans, not the land, are home to some seriously scary, mysterious predators that sometimes make you do a double take. These monsters often crush their land rivals in both numbers and sheer freak factor. Curious why? Let's dive deep into this story. I promise it'll blow your mind. Our planet's been alive for about 4 billion years, and things have never stopped changing. The oceans have seen countless weird creatures come and go, from giant beasts to tiny but deadly critters. But among all of them, only one place deserves the crown as the deadliest waters ever. Can you guess where that is? It's an ancient seaway that existed tens of millions of years ago in the last place you'd expect, right in the middle of North America. And crazier still, this body of water was later replaced by one of the deadliest patches of land on Earth. Not a coincidence, I assure you. The story of this land and water is tied together by one epic event that shoved the whole world into a fateful collision. Buckle up, because we're about to rewind time. It all started about 100 million years ago when North America looked pretty much like today from space, but once you touched down, everything was totally different. Not just because dinosaurs and pterosaurs were flying around, but the land itself was going through chaotic changes. Two tectonic plates kept crashing into each other, causing massive volcanic eruptions and building giant mountain ranges. Volcanoes alone were enough to mess with life, making things harsh. But what really scrambled the scene was the shifting landscape itself. As those plates collided, they created a huge basin running along most of North America from north to south. Usually, basins affect the environment, but this time, North America took horror to a whole new level. Picture this back then. North America was way lower than it is now, and the whole world was roasting like an oven. The heat caused sea levels to rise like crazy. Put those two together, and water started flooding inland, starting from the north where the Arctic Ocean poured through the basin, eventually linking up with the Gulf of Mexico. So, what happened next? The continent got sliced in half like someone took a giant knife and just cut right through. That's how the Western Interior Seaway was born, and trust me, this was the most dangerous body of water Earth ever saw. Want to know why? Keep listening. At its peak, this seaway was about 600 miles wide and over 2,000 miles long, stretching from Canada all the way down to Mexico. But here's the kicker. It was super shallow, only about 2,500 feet deep at most. That sounds deep. But for something that huge, it was paper thin. To put it in perspective, today there are 6 lakes deeper than it, and the Mediterranean Sea is almost 7 times deeper. So how could a shallow sea like that hold giant sea monsters? The secret lies in that very shallowness. Because it was shallow. Most of this sea was warm and sunlit, perfect for coral reefs to thrive and for the epipelagic and mesopelagic zones, those upper ocean layers, to be crazy productive. It was a paradise for life, but not exactly the kind of paradise you'd want to swim in. Plus, this seaway acted like a giant basin, collecting water runoff from the 2 new land masses it created, Laramidia in the west and Appalachia in the east. That runoff carried a ton of nutrients and sediments, diluting the seawater but also turning it into a rich stew for life. And that's not all. This sea spawned a wild variety of habitats, coastlines, swamps, wetlands, river mouths, lagoons, you name it. All these factors acted like a life-boosting energy drink, sparking a biological explosion. Soon enough, you could find every kind of monster you could imagine, in their perfect and terrifying forms. That's why it earned the nickname Hell's Aquarium. Does that name give you the chills? Let's start with the reptiles, the real rulers of these waters. The giant mosasaurs were the stars here, with some species being among the biggest creatures to ever live on Earth. They were the top predators, hunting almost everything thanks to their massive skulls, strong jaws, and thick teeth built to tear apart big bodies. Mosasaurus hoffmanni is the most famous name, but Tylosaurus was actually more common, along with smaller species like Platycarpus and Cledastes. This sea was so packed with life that mosasaurs weren't the only top predators around. Super predator sharks, some up to 16 feet long, also called this place home. Some species were even bigger than the largest great white shark ever recorded. With sharp teeth, speed, and pure ferocity, sharks sometimes cause more trouble than mosasaurs. Can you imagine a giant shark going head-to-head with a mosasaur? I sure wouldn't want to, but the hit list of killers doesn't end there. There were tons of giant carnivores, not only ugly, but able to swallow prey the size of a human whole. No questions asked as long as it fit down their throat. And on top of that, you had to watch out for the krakens, aka the cephalopods. In this little sea, the biggest cephalopod ever to live showed up Parapuzotia. It weighed up to 1.5 tons, 3 times the size of today's giant squid, making it the largest invertebrate of all time. Picture a giant squid with tentacles stretching meters long, cruising through the water. That's definitely not something you want to bump into while swimming, but not everything here was a giant hunter. There were plenty of plesiosaurs who loved snacking on little fish, with their super long necks and pretty graceful looks. Giant sea turtles weighing 3 tons also showed up, but they were pretty chill, just munching on small fish and jellyfish. You'd also find species that still hang out in today's oceans, diverse fish, smaller cephalopods, coral, algae, and a bunch more. This watery spot wasn't just a monster playground, it was a rich ecosystem where every creature found its place. And it wasn't just the underwater critters who benefited. This rich waterway also sparked a boom in pterosaurs' giant flying lizards. One of them, Pteranodon, might have been the most successful species by numbers, with over 200 specimens known, each with a wingspan up to 20 feet. Imagine a flock of pteranodons soaring through the sky, wings spread like small airplanes. Gorgeous, but also a bit terrifying. And thanks to this sea route, we also have Deinosuchus, one of the biggest crocodiles ever. This 8-ton monster had a bite strong enough to crush bones and near impenetrable armor covering most of its body. Even scarier, it didn't just hang out in the water, it prowled along coastlines and nearby waterways, so watch your back even on land. No place escaped the influence of this sea route. Even fully land-based animals got a boost thanks to its formation. When the continent split, it created 2 new islands, Laramidia and Appalachia, each with diverse ecosystems, sparking dinosaur diversification in North America. As the golden age of this sea route kicked off, the land also hit its peak, with life thriving like never before. These 2 islands were like giant stages where animals competed to show off their unique styles. If you planned a time trip to either place, here's what you'd need to know. Laramidia, the western island, had bigger than average dinosaurs, including lots of giant sauropods, the long-necked giants you see in movies. They were rarer in Appalachia, ceratopsians, with their horns and frills, along with armored ankylosaurs, were also more common here. You might also spot more snakes while walking around, not great news if you're scared of snakes. While lizards weren't super common overall, insects were a major headache. Better bring bug spray because those little guys could drive you crazy. But honestly, insects are nothing compared to the biggest threat giant tyrannosaurs, with skulls and bodies way bigger than anything in Appalachia. Run into one in the forest, run for your life, but don't go thinking Appalachia was some peaceful paradise. No way! While the big tyrannosaurs hadn't really taken over here yet, plenty of smaller but still deadly species showed up. Dryptosaurs, with their long arms and flexible claws, are a good example. Appalachia was also invaded by dromaeosaurs, those speedy raptors, along with tons of nodosaurs, hadrosaurs, lizards, and even an unnamed carcharodontosaur. And here's the kicker, this was where dinosaurs met their match, because Appalachia was crawling with crocodiles. Not just Deinosuchus, the most famous croc around, but lots of other crocodile species living underwater, semi-aquatic, and even on land. Picture yourself walking along and suddenly a giant croc jumps out of the bushes. Yeah, not exactly a fun surprise. Clearly, while life thrived in the western inland seaway, the land life wasn't sitting quietly either. Back then, North America could easily be called the craziest place on Earth, both on land and under the sea. But this seaway still had one last trick up its sleeve, quietly laying the groundwork for some of the most iconic dinosaurs ever. Want to know what it was? Stick around because the story's about to get way more interesting. Sea levels were always fluctuating, keeping animals on their toes. But about 70 million years ago, things started to change forever. The water began to retreat and almost never came back, thanks to continental plates rising, pushing the land up and drying things out. The disappearance of the seaway, combined with tectonic shifts, caused major physical impacts and shook up the climate. In just a few million years, only about 20% of the dinosaurs from the seaway's heyday were left. Many underwater species, like the plesiosaurs and smaller mosasaurs, also vanished. At first glance, that sounds pretty bad for life, but it was actually good news if you were a time traveler looking for safety. But don't pop the champagne yet, because as the saying goes, when one door closes, another opens. When the seaway dried up, it left behind a giant gap filled with fresh, fertile land built up by millions of years of sediment. Right in that gap, one of the most infamous places on Earth was born Hell Creek. This land stretches across what we now call Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota, once completely swallowed by the Seaway. Right in that gap, one of the most infamous places on Earth was Born Hell Creek. As the sea pulled back, this area became a vast floodplain full of swamps, forests, rivers, and lakes, a paradise for life. But Hell Creek was no ordinary patch of dirt. It was home to record-breaking dinosaurs, topped by the largest predator to ever walk the earth, the Tyrannosaurus rex. Thanks to the shrinking seaway and shifts in wildlife, T-Rex became the top and only megapredator in North America. It was home to record-breaking dinosaurs, topped by the largest predator to ever walk the earth, the Tyrannosaurus rex.
T-Rex was a living tank, with the largest specimens weighing up to 12.5 tons, and average individuals ranging from 5.4 to 8 tons. The largest complete specimen, known as Scotty, currently holds the title of the largest fully known theropod fossil ever discovered. With its enormous size came a jaw that was equally monstrous. The T-Rex's head was larger than an adult human, filled with sharp, slightly serrated teeth often described as killer bananas. These teeth were backed by mighty jaw muscles, capable of producing a bite force exceeding 60,000 newtons. 3 times stronger than the most powerful bite known on Earth today. That was enough to crush armor, flesh, and bone. When it bit, T-Rex practically vaporized anything it touched. The evidence? Fossilized T-Rex dung contains bone fragments ground into powder. And although its arms looked small and weak, they were strong enough to lift nearly half a ton or pin down a struggling prey. On top of that, T-Rex had excellent vision and an exceptional sense of smell, and it may have lived in groups, gathering wherever blood was spilled. Just imagine a pack of T-Rexes lurking in the forest. It's not a scene you'd ever want to stumble into. With its size and bite force, T-Rex hunted massive herbivores that most other predators could only dream of taking down. T-Rex was a nightmare come to life, and that's one reason why Hell Creek was such a dangerous place. A paleontological study found that T-Rex was the second most common dinosaur species in the area. While it did exist in other parts of the U.S., 85% of named specimens come from Hell Creek. Good luck avoiding them. And just to add to the drama, T-Rex was known to be aggressive, even when not hunting. Many fossils show signs of brutal fights, and there is even evidence of cannibalism. The only small comfort? Despite its immense strength, T-Rex wasn't as fast as a cheetah, and probably didn't bother with small, quick prey. But don't breathe easy just yet. Hell Creek was still crawling with other killers. One of them was Nanotyrannus, faster and more agile than T-Rex but still big, weighing up to 1.5 tons. It preferred to hunt things around our size. You know what that means. There's debate over whether it was simply a juvenile T-Rex or a completely separate genus, but regardless, it was a swift nightmare that shattered the peace for smaller species. Aside from the tyrants, Hell Creek was also a raptor paradise. No, not the velociraptors you're thinking of. They didn't live in North America. Instead, we had Acaroraptor, a close relative of velociraptor, up to 3 meters long and weighing about as much as a large Bernese mountain dog. With its lethal sickle-shaped claws and lightweight frame, it was fast, agile, and extremely dangerous. Like T-Rex, it had a fearsome bite, but in a different way. Its teeth were serrated, and its jaws were weaker, meant for quick slashes to cut, tear, and bleed prey out. It ranks as one of the 8 most common dinosaurs in the region. Rarer, but far more terrifying, was Dakotaraptor. Grizzly bear-sized, nearly 6 meters long, with claws the size of large kitchen knives. 23 centimeters long, capable of deep stabs and organ destruction. The tendon structure controlling those claws suggests it had the strongest slashing power among all known dromaeosaurs. The good news? There's some debate over whether it even existed, as its fossils might be a mix of several species. But still, the other raptors were already enough of a problem, like Sauronitholestes, which may or may not have even lived into the Hell Creek era. Hell Creek didn't need more predators. It already had plenty of carnage to go around. But to become the most terrifying land in history, you also need some seriously formidable herbivores. and Hell Creek had no shortage of them. The average herbivore here was Triceratops, one of the largest ceratopsids to ever live. Imagine an African elephant, but stronger, more aggressive, with two sharp horns and a massive shield-like frill on its head. Most predators only dreamed of taking one down, as the biggest individuals could weigh up to 10 tons. Even T-Rex had to be cautious. Each horn over 1 meter long, and Triceratops is the only species with fossil evidence of having injured a T-Rex. About 14% of Triceratops specimens show head injuries, suggesting intense intraspecies combat. And it wasn't alone. It had backup from Torosaurus, adding even more horned fury to the area. Any place would be notable for hosting one massive ceratopsid. But in Hell Creek, being massive was just standard. Ankylosaurus, the heaviest ankylosaurid ever discovered, was a biological tank, with bone armor plates wider than dinner dishes, covering most of its upper body, weighing up to 8 tons. Though shorter and lower than T-Rex or Triceratops, it was still a formidable opponent. Is it a signature weapon? A tail ending in 2 large bone knobs, controlled by powerful muscles, capable of delivering a blow stronger than 370 professional baseball players combined, and possibly up to 1,000. Enough to break a T-Rex's leg. And it's one of the few large animals in Hell Creek with no fossil evidence of predation, suggesting that even the biggest theropods stayed away. Even the hadrosaurs, often considered the punching bags of the dinosaur world, were no easy targets here. Edmontosaurus, found in Hell Creek, was one of the largest hadrosaurs, reaching up to 13 meters long and weighing significantly more than a T-Rex. Though it lacked obvious weapons, it was fast, with strong legs and a powerful tail. Think of it as a giant, hornless bull that could kick hard and whip you with a deadly tail. And thanks to its herding behavior, they were far from easy prey. Among these giants, you had to be a titan among titans just to survive. Even smaller predators had a tough time because the go big or go home trend applied to everything. One of the 4 pachycephalosaur species in Hell Creek was the largest of its kind, weighing nearly half a ton, with a sledgehammer skull that frequently caused dents and fractures in the skulls of its kind. There were also unusually large oviraptors and ornithomimosaurs, like Struthiomimus and Anzu, herbivores or omnivores, heavier than an average human but much, much faster. Struthiomimus could reach speeds of up to 80 km/h, nearly twice as fast as Usain Bolt. Even birds benefited from the Hell Creek environment. One of the largest known birds of the time, Magnus avis, lived here. Its name means great bird. Not quite big bird, but still pretty impressive. Hell Creek was truly the place where dinosaurs unlocked their full potential. But with all that abundant resource, non-dinosaur species showed up too. We might even owe Hell Creek for the emergence of snakes, as the earliest known snake fossils have been found here. Crocodiles roamed the waters, turning something as simple as drinking water into a risky mission. And on land, carnivorous lizards reached rarely seen sizes, like Paleosaniwa, which looked like a Komodo dragon but was more closely related to the Gila monster, and had shark-like teeth designed to rip flesh apart. But even more terrifying was the Hell Dragon of Hell Creek, a giant pterosaur from the Azhdarchid family, once mistaken for Quetzalcoatlus. With a wingspan of 4.2 meters, it was already massive, but its real power came from its height. When standing on its elbow joints, it could easily look over your head, with a giant skull and a long, pointed beak. Unlike fish-hunting pterosaurs, this one likely hunted on land, using its beak to swallow prey whole or tear it apart. If you were a juvenile dinosaur, a reptile, or a small mammal, you were done for. Hell Creek seemed to have every kind of nightmare imaginable. But perhaps the ultimate surprise was a mosasaur, the Hell Creek mosasaur. Sounds strange, since Hell Creek wasn't a seaway. However, in 2021, researchers discovered a mosasaur fossil here, measuring around 11 meters long and possibly up to 15 meters. At that size, nothing was off the menu, not even a T-Rex, if it wandered too close to the water. But the big question is, what was it doing here? Hell Creek had many freshwater or brackish species, like fish and turtles, but it wasn't the place you'd expect to find a marine apex predator. Several hypotheses have been proposed, none confirmed. One suggests this species had adapted to brackish or fresh water, possibly from a southern seaway. Another theory is that it was a stray individual that wandered far inland. But the most supported hypothesis is that the collapse of the Seaway wasn't as clean or final as once believed, with intermittent sea level rises creating temporary coastal zones within Hell Creek. Whatever the case, Hell Creek earned its terrifying reputation. So how do you reset a place where almost every creature was an icon? The answer? Throw a giant space rock at it and hit reset on everything. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.